What's going on, guys? It's Greg here, aka NYPrepper. It is Saturday, April 11th, 2026, and I have some breaking news to share with you guys. Right now it is 16:07 Eastern Time here in the United States, and I wanted to update you guys on the situation with Iran. So right now in Pakistan, the US Vice President J.D. Vance is meeting with the Iranian leaders and also with the Pakistani Prime Minister. And we're hearing as of right now that the talks may continue even into tomorrow. So these talks are apparently very intense right now. And apparently the Iranians are complaining that the U.S. is not budging on the nuclear issue and the missiles issue. And apparently one of the main sticking points is the Strait of Hormuz. Apparently Iran wants to have control over the Strait of Hormuz, which is just totally insane. But before I get into more of the details related to Iran, I wanted to share some very concerning news coming out of Europe. So we're seeing more European countries preparing for war with Russia and World War III. So the UK is preparing a new version of a major plan to ready the whole nation, from the military and police to hospitals and industry, for the transition to war, the head of the armed forces told Sky News. Air Chief Marshal Sir Richard Knighton said the updated iteration of what was called the Government War Book would require people to think differently about resilience, drawing on lessons from the Cold War. So the UK is making a major update to their civil defense plans, preparing for a war with Russia, drawing on lessons from the Cold War. This is huge news. Now, in addition to this, we also have Poland and Estonia updating their civil defense plans. So Poland's Catholic Church is preparing parishes as crisis centers amid war fears. The Polish Bishops' Conference has established a special working group to develop an action plan in the event of an armed conflict reaching Poland, as most Poles will first turn to the church for help and only then to municipal institutions and offices, officials say. So if you guys are not aware, Poland is a deeply Christian country. They've been officially a Christian nation since the year 966, when King Mieszko, the founder of Poland, declared Poland to be a Christian nation. So Polish people would basically trust their churches before their government. So the Polish Catholic churches are now going to be working with the government to provide civil defense supplies to Polish people, okay? Poland's Catholic Church is developing crisis plans with the government to prepare parishes as emergency centers in the event of war or natural disasters, the head of the Polish Bishops' Conference said. The government has agreed to provide parishes with generators for electricity, water supplies, medicines, and hygiene products in the event of a crisis. The Bishops' Conference has established a working expert team to develop procedures for crisis preparedness and security threats, according to Father Leszek Giełszak, the conference's spokesman. Reverend Dr. Jarosław Mrówczyński, Deputy General Secretary of the Bishops' Conference, will coordinate the team. The activities will be of a routine nature and will be part of the standard duties of the state in the field of civil protection and civil defense. The aim is to create clear, coordinated procedures to support citizens in a crisis. The working group includes representatives from about a dozen institutions. The plan covers three key areas: assisting refugees and organizing humanitarian corridors, using the parish network to distribute food, water, and shelter, securing parish facilities as first aid points, and evacuating and protecting monuments. Wow. Guys, if you're not aware, I have Polish heritage. My parents are immigrants from Poland. They escaped shortly after martial law was declared in Poland in the early 80s. And that was when Poland was still communist. But Poland has not done anything like this since the Second World War, okay, when Poland turned their Catholic churches into places where Polish people could hide from Nazis. And they also supported the Polish underground resistance movement, the Polish guerrilla fighters, basically Polish partisans that were conducting guerrilla warfare against the Nazis and the Russians, but mostly the Nazis. So this is huge. Poland hasn't done this in almost 100 years, okay, since the Second World War. And also, apparently, Estonia is also preparing for some kind of major conflict. Check this out.
Estonia is preparing for the toughest scenario. If the country is completely cut off by air, sea, and land, it must hold out on its own for at least 30 days. This has already been officially included in the updated security strategy. For ordinary people, the bar has also been raised. Every resident is essentially told to be ready to live at least 7 days without assistance.
Okay, so their updated security strategy is to prepare for the possibility that Estonia gets completely cut off from NATO, that their infrastructure gets cut off, and they should be able to fight on their own and survive for 30 days while they wait for NATO assistance. And then every citizen is supposed to have 7 days of supplies, okay?
The rules-based world order is beginning to fall apart, and we need not to reorient, but to learn, so to speak, to navigate in new conditions along with our closest allies. And what Ukraine has now built up and strengthened is that it is now striking ports Ust-Luga and Primorska with drones, which are more than 1,000 kilometers away.
Tallinn directly names Russia as the main threat, but the document goes even broader. The world has become more dangerous. The US is changing its priorities, which means Europe must arm itself faster and take more responsibility for its security. The toughest innovation is the principle of active defense. Estonia no longer wants to fight on its own land and explicitly states that in the event of an attack, hostilities should be moved to enemy territory.
So this is huge news, okay? Estonia wants to take the fight to the Russians and not wait for the Russians to invade and then defend their own territory on their territory, okay? They want to be able to actually conduct attacks inside of Russian territory. So that's a huge shift in NATO's strategy from prior years, where NATO said, well, we're not going to attack Russia on their territory if they were to attack the Baltics, because that would provoke them into using nukes. Okay, so now the plan has completely changed, but we have Estonia, Poland, the UK, all suddenly updating their civil defense plans, and Poland turning churches into civil defense shelters. Okay, this is absolutely huge breaking news. And here we have footage of the U.S. Vice President meeting with the Pakistani Prime Minister. This was earlier this morning. The meetings are still ongoing right now. And a report in the Wall Street Journal said that 2 American warships crossed the Strait of Hormuz today. The event passed without unusual incidents, and this is the first time since the beginning of the war that U.S. military ships crossed the Strait of Hormuz. So Iran is denying that, saying it's fake news. And face-to-face negotiations between Iran and the U.S. are expected to last well into the night and possibly stretch into Sunday, a Pakistani source told CNN. And only 2 ships transited the Strait of Hormuz today, according to data shared with NBC News by SPG Energy Oil, marking the lowest level since Trump announced a ceasefire with Iran earlier this week. Daily traffic before the war typically ranged between 130 and 160 vessels. Okay, so from 130 to 160 vessels down to just one or two in the last day or so. Okay, that is very, very concerning. And U.S. intelligence indicates Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles and could restore parts of its launch capability by recovering launchers from underground storage sites, despite repeated U.S.-Israeli strikes throughout the war, according to the Wall Street Journal, citing U.S. officials. While more than half of Iran's launchers are believed to have been destroyed, damaged, or trapped underground, U.S. officials assess that many could eventually be repaired or dug out. Some in Washington are concerned Tehran could use the current pause in fighting to rebuild elements of its missile arsenal, even as efforts continue to solidify the ceasefire and fully reopen the Strait of Hormuz. Okay, so U.S. intelligence indicating that Iran still has thousands of ballistic missiles and could start restoring their launch capability. Okay. And Reuters is reporting that Iran's new supreme leader, Mujtaba Khamenei, is recovering from severe injuries, including reported facial disfigurement and leg wounds sustained in an airstrike earlier in the war. He is said to remain involved in decision-making via remote communication, though his condition has not been officially confirmed and no public images or appearances have been released since the attack, so severely injured. And before I continue with the breaking news, I wanted to mention the sponsor for this update, which is Matt Hat Jerky. Guys, if you're a beef jerky lover like myself, you got to try Matt Hat Jerky. This is the best beef jerky I've ever had. I personally met the owner of this company at SHOT Show, and he's actually local to Pennsylvania. This company has an interesting story behind it. He founded this company when he was 11 years old. Yeah, that's right, 11 years old. He's now 19, and he makes gourmet beef jerky, the best jerky I've ever had. He's got over a dozen different flavors, and it's all sourced with U.S. beef. So no foreign beef, no nitrates, and no MSG. So it's all natural American beef jerky. And if you use my promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And you got to go to matthatjerky.com. And I'm going to leave a link in the description down below. That's matthatjerky.com. One word, matthatjerky.com. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off your entire order, and the link and the promo code are in the description down below. And Iran has communicated its list of red lines to Pakistani mediators as part of talks with the U.S. Their core demands are control and sovereignty over the Strait of Hormuz, which is insane. Okay, that is international waters, and that has nothing to do with the U.S. The UN would have to agree. Okay, all the countries in the world would have to have a UN meeting and grant Iran the right to have control over this strait, which is international waters, guys. Payment of war reparations for damage caused during the conflict, release of all frozen Iranian assets, a comprehensive, sustainable, and tangible ceasefire across the entire region, not limited to any single front. So they want Israel to not be able to strike Lebanon at all, okay? And Tehran insists these conditions must be met before any final agreement. Wow. So Iran doubling down on their demands, not showing any compromise. And U.S. intelligence indicates China is preparing to deliver new air defense systems to Iran in the coming weeks during the ceasefire period. So China is helping Iran to rearm itself during this ceasefire. And a U.S. State Department official told CNN that staff at our embassy in Iraq were attacked by drones near Baghdad airport on Wednesday. So just the next day after the ceasefire was called by Trump. And U.S. officials told the Wall Street Journal that jets have recently arrived in the Middle East, and 1,500 to 2,000 troops from the Army's 82nd Airborne could arrive in the coming days, as well as thousands of sailors and Marines. The USS George H.W. Bush Carrier Strike Group and the 11th Marine Expeditionary Unit are still on their way to the region and will likely take more than a week to arrive. Okay, so a lot of U.S. troops are still moving into the region, so that could be one reason why Trump suddenly declared a ceasefire, okay? And I want to read to you what Trump posted today. He said the fake news media has lost total credibility, and not that they had any to begin with because of their massive Trump derangement syndrome. They love saying that Iran is winning when in fact everyone knows that they are losing, and losing big. Their Navy is gone, their Air Force is gone, their anti-aircraft apparatus is non-existent, radar is dead. Their missile and drone factories have been largely obliterated, along with the missiles and drones themselves. And most importantly, their longtime leaders are no longer with us. Praise be to Allah. The only thing they have going is the threat that a ship may bunk into one of their sea mines, which, by the way, all 28 of their mine dropper boats are also lying at the bottom of the sea. We're now starting the process of clearing out the Strait of Hormuz as a favor to countries all over the world, including China, Japan, South Korea, France, Germany, and many others. Incredibly, they don't have the courage or will to do this work themselves. Very interestingly, however, empty oil-carrying ships from many nations are all heading to the U.S. to load up with oil. So the last thing that Trump said is actually true. There are a large number, actually 3 times the amount of ships coming to the U.S. now to fill up with U.S. oil. Okay, so maybe that was part of Trump's plan with this whole war. I don't know. And here we have a vessel tracking software showing one of the U.S. naval ships passing through the Strait of Hormuz earlier. And then here we have a picture that was released by Al Jazeera showing the damage to this critical U.S. early warning radar that was stationed in Qatar and was damaged by an Iranian drone strike a few weeks ago during the war. Okay, so you can see massive damage. This is a phased array radar. It's very similar to like the pave pause that we have here in the U.S. Each one of these sides here are pointed in different directions. It's 3-sided. Okay, so this is a ballistic missile early warning radar that was hit. Very, very concerning. And this shows that the U.S. has a gap in their security. That, yes, while we have amazing missiles and radars that can detect missiles from a long distance, all it takes is one Iranian drone to evade American air defenses and strike this early warning radar, and then suddenly we're blind. So the U.S. does not have good drone defense capabilities, okay? And CBS News is reporting that the U.S. lost 24 MQ-9 Reaper drones during the Iran war. The drones represent a total loss of about $720 million, guys. 24 Reaper drones. That's about 1 per day during the war. U.S. intelligence believes reopening the Strait of Hormuz is unlikely anytime soon, according to Reuters. And, you know, U.S. intelligence has basically been conflicting with what Trump has been saying, which is that, you know, we obliterated their missiles. The Strait of Hormuz is going to reopen soon. Well, U.S. intelligence is saying the opposite, that they still have thousands of missiles and they're recovering those missiles now and their launch capabilities. And the Strait of Hormuz is not going to open anytime soon, okay? So get prepared for high fuel prices for at least the next few weeks, even if there is a ceasefire, which I don't think there will be, but we'll have to wait and see. And Trump made some comments yesterday about Iran. He said, "We have other countries coming to help with the Strait of Hormuz. We will have that open fairly soon." A reporter asked him, "What does a good deal look like for you?" He said, "No nuclear weapon, number one. I think it has already been regime change. We never had that as a criteria, but no nuclear weapon, that is 99% of it." So he's saying as long as Iran promises not to make a nuclear weapon, he's okay with them charging millions of dollars in tolls to every oil tanker passing through. He's okay with Iran having ballistic missiles. Just totally insane. He also said that the Strait of Hormuz will open up automatically, otherwise they make no money. We will open the strait anyway. So he's saying that the companies are going to start sending their ships through the Strait of Hormuz on their own, and that's not true. They're not going to do that, okay? And the reporter asked, "You're not going to let Iran toll the strait, are you?" And he said, "We are not going to let them do it. Nobody knows if they are doing that. If they are doing that, we will not let that happen." And the Iranian parliament speaker and the foreign minister arrived in Pakistan for the talks with the U.S., and Israeli Channel 11 is reporting that the Israeli army is preparing for the possibility of a collapse of the talks between the U.S. and Iran and a resumption of attacks. If no substantial agreement is reached, we will be forced to return to Iran once again. And the American delegation in Pakistan for talks with Iran has about 300 members, while the Iranian delegation has about 70, including 20 main negotiators. And the U.S. and Lebanon have asked Israel for a pause in its attacks on Hezbollah ahead of negotiations, according to Axios. And Trump is pushing Israel to implement a ceasefire in Lebanon, according to Israeli Channel 12. And a White House official told Reuters today that the U.S. has not agreed to release frozen Iranian assets. Okay, so that was one of the main things that the Iranians wanted, is to release the frozen assets. Okay. And Iran hasn't been able to open the Strait of Hormuz to more shipping traffic because it cannot locate all of the mines it laid in the waterway and lacks the capability to remove them, according to the New York Times, citing U.S. officials. The safe routes announced by the IRGC are limited in large part because Iran mined the strait haphazardly, U.S. officials said. The officials say it is unclear whether Iran accurately tracked the location of every mine it deployed in the Strait of Hormuz, and even when positions were recorded, some mines may have drifted or shifted over time. Guys, that is scary. Could you imagine if you're on an oil tanker and you're going through the Strait of Hormuz, and I mean, you don't know where these mines could be, and you know, you're loaded with, you know, millions of barrels of oil. I mean, that's just crazy. And that's also an environmental catastrophe waiting to happen, you know, all because the Iranians are incompetent and they just don't care. You know, they just mined this waterway without any care. Okay. And 13 members of the Lebanese state security were killed in Israeli airstrikes on a government building in southern Lebanon yesterday. And Iranian media, quoting the Iranian foreign minister, said Washington must honor its commitments by including Lebanon in the ceasefire and halting Israeli attacks on it. Very interesting. And the Washington Post said the American delegation will request the release of Americans detained in Iran. And the Speaker of Iran's parliament said two of the measures mutually agreed upon between the parties have yet to be implemented: a ceasefire in Lebanon and the release of Iran's blocked assets prior to the commencement of negotiations. So Iran is saying that, you know, we're not doing what they want, and that's like a major prerequisite for them, or precondition. And Trump told his aides he plans sweeping pardons for his staff before leaving office, and said he would pardon everyone who has come within 200 feet of the Oval Office, according to the Wall Street Journal. And Lebanon's army, for some reason, has deployed heavily across Beirut following a government decision, with commando units patrolling and snipers positioned on high-rise buildings near the government palace. So it looks like they're afraid of some kind of a coup or something like that. And here we have some pretty crazy footage showing a man in Ireland who broke into this airfield, Shannon Airport, and climbed on top of the wing of a U.S. Air Force C-130 and took a hammer and started pounding on the wings. And that actually was enough to put the plane out of service. So this is just totally insane. But that's the latest breaking news that I have. I might be back later on with more breaking news. And until the next time, take care. God bless. And don't forget the 3 P's: prepare, practice, and persevere. And don't forget to subscribe. Make sure you subscribe and leave a comment. Hit the thumbs up button and hype this video if you like it. It helps the channel a lot. And this update was sponsored by EMP Shield. Guys, EMP Shield has created a special discount just for you, the listeners of the NYPrepper channel. If you go to empshield.com and use the promo code NYPrepper, you can get 15% off your entire order. And why do you need an EMP Shield? Well, this is a special device to protect your vehicle, your RV, your solar generators, your radios from an electromagnetic pulse, which could be caused by a solar flare or potentially a rogue country like North Korea detonating an electromagnetic pulse weapon over the United States that's mounted onto a satellite. So protect your vehicles, protect your RV, protect your radios, protect your generators with an EMP Shield. Use my promo code NYPrepper to get 15% off. Installation is super simple. This is a veteran-owned business, 100% American-made, and the EMP Shields have been tested by the military, okay? And free shipping is included to the entire continental United States. And the link and the promo code are in the description below this video.